Ethan Miller's mornings had become an echo chamber of silence. The alarm clock rang at 6:30, precise as ever, followed by the muted hum of the espresso machine and the soft shuffle of his husband's footsteps in the hallway. Lucas moved through their apartment like a shadow, quiet, efficient, emotionally absent. Their words over breakfast were courteous but hollow, fragments of routine more than conversation. Big day? Lucas asked, without looking up from his phone. Just the usual, Ethan replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. They had mastered the art of coexisting without collision. What once felt like comfort now resembled distance measured in inches and unspoken thoughts. Ethan watched Lucas leave first, his tailored coat perfectly buttoned, his scent lingering only a moment before the front door clicked shut. The silence that followed was both relief and punishment. By 7:30, Ethan was on his way to work, a drizzle dampening the city streets. He preferred walking to the bus stop. It gave him a few minutes to think, or rather, to avoid thinking. The same billboard flashed above the intersection every morning: be who you are. A message that once felt liberating now mocked him with irony. He reached the stop just as the bus pulled away, splashing through a puddle and baptizing him in cold rainwater. Perfect, he muttered under his breath. The next bus wasn't due for 15 minutes, enough time to question why he still felt tethered to a life that no longer fit. When the second bus arrived, it was nearly full. Damp coats and impatient sighs filled the air. Ethan scanned for a seat and saw only one, beside a man with a sketchbook resting on his lap. The stranger glanced up briefly, offering a half-smile that felt both polite and disarming. Go ahead, he said, moving his bag aside. Ethan nodded his thanks and sat down, careful not to brush against him. The city rolled past in shades of gray. After a moment, curiosity betrayed him, and he glanced at the sketchbook. The page showed two figures, standing close, yet facing opposite directions. Interesting piece, Ethan said softly. The man looked up again, his eyes calm but keen. It's not finished. I'm still figuring out what they're looking at. I like it that way, Ethan replied. Feels real. The stranger's mouth curved slightly. Ryan, he said, offering his hand. Ethan. Ryan's grip was warm, confident but not forced. For a moment, the clatter of the bus faded beneath a silence that wasn't awkward, it was attentive. Ryan went back to sketching, his pencil moving with measured precision. Ethan turned toward the window, but his reflection was all he saw. In that fleeting glass image, he looked like someone mid-fall, still pretending to stand. They spoke again when the bus hit a sudden stop, jolting them slightly closer. Ryan chuckled under his breath. Public transport, the great equalizer. Or the great humbler, Ethan replied, a laugh slipping out before he could stop it. It was small, genuine, something he hadn't heard from himself in weeks. The conversation drifted easily after that: books, weather, the absurdity of city life. Ryan had a knack for speaking like every word mattered just enough, never too much. When Ethan mentioned his work in marketing, Ryan nodded thoughtfully. So, you tell stories for a living, he said. Ethan blinked, caught off guard by the phrasing. I guess I do. Ryan's eyes met his. Maybe that's why you seem like you're trying to rewrite one. Ethan looked away, pretending to check his phone, unsure how a stranger could see through him so quickly. The bus slowed at another stop. A few passengers got off, others climbed aboard. The seat between them felt charged, not in a romantic way, but in that rare, human way. Two people briefly aligned in quiet recognition. Ryan spoke again, softer now. You ever feel like you're in the right place at the wrong time? Ethan exhaled, a long, weary breath. Every day lately. Ryan smiled faintly, then returned to his sketchbook. For the next 10 minutes, neither spoke. The silence wasn't heavy, it was full, alive with things neither dared say. When Ryan stood to leave, Ethan felt a strange tug of disappointment. This is me, Ryan said. Nice talking to you, Ethan. You too. Ryan hesitated, then tore a small sheet from his notebook and placed it on the seat. Before Ethan could ask, the bus doors closed behind him. He unfolded the paper once Ryan had disappeared into the crowd. In clean, quick handwriting, it read, "You looked like you needed to talk." Ethan stared at the note, unsure whether to smile or feel exposed. He slipped it into his pocket, his heart pacing faster than the traffic outside. When he reached his stop, the world seemed subtly altered. The rain had stopped, and the clouds were thinning, allowing a faint stretch of light to color the wet pavement. He walked home slower than usual, the note's words replaying in his mind like a whisper he didn't know how to answer. Lucas was already home when Ethan arrived, barefoot, reading something on his tablet. "You're late," he said, not unkindly, but with the casual tone of someone accustomed to disconnection. "Traffic," Ethan lied, hanging his coat. They ate dinner in near silence. The clink of cutlery filled the spaces their conversation no longer reached. Lucas talked briefly about a new architectural project. Ethan nodded, pretending to listen. His mind drifted back to the bus, to the warmth of that short exchange, to the way Ryan's eyes had seemed to hold understanding without pity. Later, in bed, Lucas fell asleep quickly. Ethan lay awake, the note in his hand under the blanket, folded and refolded until the paper grew soft at the edges. He turned it over, searching for meaning that wasn't there. For the first time in months, he didn't check his work emails before sleeping. He didn't think about deadlines or clients. He thought about a stranger who had seen through him in a 15-minute bus ride, and about the parts of himself he had long stopped trying to see. The room was dim, lit only by the faint streetlight slipping through the blinds. The sound of rain began again, gentle against the glass. Ethan closed his eyes, the note pressed to his chest like something fragile he couldn't explain. Outside, the city carried on, indifferent, endless, full of strangers crossing paths. Somewhere among them, a man named Ryan was sketching another unfinished scene, and Ethan, though he didn't yet know it, had already taken his first step away from everything he thought was steady. The rain deepened, and with it, a quiet thought took shape in his mind. Not a decision, not yet, but a possibility. Tomorrow, he told himself, he might just take the same bus again. Ethan began taking the 8:10 bus every morning, though he told Lucas he had an early meeting. It wasn't about seeing Ryan, or so he told himself, it was about breaking the monotony, giving his life a pulse. Yet every day, as the bus doors hissed open, his eyes searched instinctively for that familiar figure with the sketchbook that he didn't appear for 3 days. The fourth morning, Ethan spotted him in the back, a coffee cup balanced between his knees, pencil moving over paper. Their eyes met briefly. Ryan smiled, small but certain, as if he had expected him all along. "You made it," Ryan said when Ethan sat down. "I was beginning to think you switched routes," Ethan replied, relieved at how natural his voice sounded. "Sometimes I take different paths," Ryan said. "But I always end up back here." The bus rolled forward, a quiet rhythm underlining their words. Their conversations began to stretch beyond pleasantries. Ryan talked about colors, spaces, the way cities hide emotion in plain sight. Ethan listened, grateful for the effortless flow. With Ryan, there was no pressure to perform, no need to polish his sentences. He could exist without defending his silences. Each morning, they spoke a little longer, shared a little more. Ethan found himself revealing things he had never said aloud, how his job felt like living inside a loop, how marriage had become a polite agreement instead of a partnership. Ryan listened without interrupting, only asking questions that felt like mirrors. "Do you ever think comfort can be its own kind of trap?" Ryan asked one morning, his gaze fixed on the passing skyline. Ethan hesitated. "All the time." "Then maybe the trick," Ryan said softly, "is learning which parts of your life still make you feel alive." Ethan thought of Lucas, his predictability, his warmth gone quiet. They hadn't fought in months, but that was the problem. Silence was safer than confrontation. Every word between them was filtered, rehearsed, careful. The next day, Ethan brought 2 coffees and handed one to Ryan without thinking. Ryan accepted it with a smile that lingered a second too long. "You remembered how I take it," he said. Ethan shrugged. "You mentioned it once. Most people don't listen that closely." That small acknowledgement stayed with Ethan all day. At work, he caught himself checking his phone, half expecting a message that would never come. It wasn't a crush, he told himself. It was connection, a word that felt innocent enough to hide behind. Lucas noticed the change first. "You've been smiling more," he said one evening, setting his wine glass down. "Did something happen at work?" Ethan looked up, startled. "No. Just less stress lately." Lucas nodded but didn't press. The conversation drifted toward the usual: deadlines, schedules, a dinner they might plan but never would. Yet as they talked, Ethan's mind replayed the sound of Ryan's laugh, the way his voice dropped when he spoke about art. Days turned into weeks. Their bus rides grew longer, not in time but in meaning. One Friday morning, Ryan handed Ethan a small folded paper. "Open it later," he said before getting off. Ethan waited until lunch, curiosity gnawing at restraint. Inside was a sketch, him, sitting by the window, looking out. The shading was delicate, but the eyes carried something raw, something that felt too intimate to name. Underneath, Ryan had written, "You look like someone trying to find his way home." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Lucas was beside him, breathing evenly, peaceful in a way that made Ethan's heart ache. He turned on his side, staring at the ceiling, the image of that sketch burning behind his eyes. The following Monday, he saw Ryan again. The air between them felt charged, fragile. "You drew me," Ethan said quietly. Ryan didn't look embarrassed. "You looked like a story I hadn't finished." Ethan laughed softly, though his pulse raced. "You shouldn't do that. It's personal." Ryan met his eyes. "So don't let it be just a drawing." The words hung there, and Ethan felt something shift, an invisible thread tightening. It wasn't an invitation, not exactly, but it wasn't innocent anymore either. Their conversations began stretching beyond the bus. Texts came first, short, thoughtful exchanges about books or movies, small jokes that slipped into late-night hours. Ryan sent photos of sketches in progress. Ethan sent nothing of himself, yet felt seen. One evening, Ryan mentioned an upcoming gallery show. "You should come," he said. "It's not fancy, just something I've been working on." Ethan hesitated. "Lucas might." "You don't have to explain," Ryan interrupted gently. "It's just an open invite." But Ethan did go. He told Lucas he had a work event. The gallery was small, the walls lined with pieces that seemed to breathe loneliness and color at once. He found Ryan near the corner, surrounded by quiet admiration. "Didn't think you'd come," Ryan said, smiling. "I almost didn't," Ethan admitted. "But I wanted to see what you see." Ryan looked at him then, deeply, as if the noise around them didn't exist. "You already do." They walked through the exhibit together, saying little. Each painting carried some fragment of longing, hands almost touching, faces half-turned. When Ethan stopped before one of the sketches, a pair of figures standing close, looking in opposite directions, he recognized it immediately. "That's the one from the bus," he said. Ryan nodded. "It's called The Pause Before." "The pause before what?" Ryan smiled faintly. "Before you decide what you really want." For a moment, the air thickened with everything they weren't saying. Ryan's hand brushed his arm, brief, deliberate, enough to make Ethan's breath catch. He left soon after, the city lights blurring through the windshield of the cab. The world outside looked unreal, painted in shades of decision and doubt. When he reached home, Lucas was still awake, reading on the couch. "How was your event?" Lucas asked, not looking up. "Fine," Ethan said, his voice thin. Lucas nodded, his tone even. "You've been somewhere else lately." Ethan froze. "What do you mean?" Lucas looked at him then, searching his face. "You're here, but not really here." "Did I do something wrong?" The question hit harder than accusation would have. Ethan shook his head, the lie forming too easily. "Of course not." Lucas smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then come to bed." Ethan followed, guilt settling like a weight he couldn't name. As Lucas drifted to sleep, Ethan stared into the darkness, tracing the memory of Ryan's touch, how fleeting it had been, how it refused to fade, that he told himself it was only friendship, only curiosity, only escape. But deep down, he knew something irreversible had already begun. Outside, the night bus hummed in the distance, crossing streets he now knew by heart. And somewhere, Ryan was probably awake too, sketching another unfinished story, unaware or maybe completely certain that Ethan Miller's world was quietly beginning to split in two. Ethan woke before dawn, though he hadn't slept. The rain that had started overnight still whispered against the windows, steady and unrelenting. Lucas's arm rested across his waist, a familiar weight that once meant comfort. Now it felt like memory, warm, but distant. Ethan lay still, listening to the rhythm of the rain and the sound of his own quiet regret that he slipped from bed carefully, not wanting to wake him. In the kitchen, the coffee machine hummed to life, its soft hiss filling the silence. Ethan stared at the steam curling from his cup and wondered when his life had begun to feel like something happening to someone else. The bus rides, the sketches, the glances, they had all seemed harmless at first. But now every ordinary moment felt borrowed, fragile, ready to collapse under the truth he had yet to speak aloud. When Lucas entered, hair slightly disheveled, Ethan forced a smile. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," Lucas replied. He hesitated before asking, "Everything okay between us?" Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing coherent formed. He wanted to say yes, to reassure, to keep the illusion alive a little longer, but lies no longer came easily. Instead, he said softly, "I don't know." Lucas studied him for a long time, eyes tired but searching. "Then maybe we should figure it out." The words landed with quiet force, but Ethan couldn't respond. He left soon after, coat pulled tight, heading toward the bus stop like a man escaping rather than commuting. The city looked washed out in the rain, buildings blurred by fog. When the bus arrived, he stepped inside and scanned automatically for Ryan. The seat where he usually sat was empty. For the first time, Ethan didn't know whether to feel relief or disappointment. He sat alone, hands clenched, the engine's rumble echoing the weight in his chest. Ryan didn't appear that day. Or the next. By the third morning, Ethan's anticipation had turned into quiet dread. He had built an entire rhythm around those fleeting moments, a rhythm now gone, leaving only static in its place. That evening, when he got home, Lucas was waiting in the living room. His posture was calm, but his expression had a stillness that felt dangerous. On the coffee table lay something small and folded, Ryan's note. Ethan froze. "Where did you? It fell out of your wallet," Lucas said. His voice was steady, almost too steady. "You looked like you needed to talk." "Interesting message." Ethan's throat tightened. "It's not what you think." Lucas gave a small, humorless laugh. "Then tell me what it is." "Because I've been here, loving you the best I know how, and you've been somewhere else entirely." "I never meant to." Ethan stopped, the sentence unraveling in his mouth. Lucas leaned forward, his voice lower now. "Is it him? The man from the bus?" Ethan looked down, unable to meet his eyes. The silence between them was answer enough. Lucas exhaled slowly and stood. "You don't have to say it," he whispered. "I already know." When he left the room, Ethan sank onto the couch, the sound of the rain loud against the windows. The walls seemed to close in around him, every photo, every shared memory now heavy with loss. He wanted to chase after Lucas, to explain that he hadn't crossed any visible line. But he knew that emotional betrayal didn't need proof, it lived in tone, in glances, in the unspoken. Later that night, he found himself walking through the rain, coat unbuttoned, shoes soaking through. He boarded the bus without thinking, hoping for something, answers, closure, maybe punishment. The seats were nearly empty. The spot where Ryan once sat remained vacant, as if marked for a ghost. As the city lights slid across the wet glass, Ethan realized the cruel symmetry of it all. He had met Ryan by chance, and now he was gone the same way, without warning, without goodbye. What Ryan had given him wasn't romance, it was reflection. A mirror held too close that he got off at Ryan's usual stop and wandered through the narrow streets, uncertain what he was looking for. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, and the world felt unfamiliar. He walked past a small art studio, its windows dark except for one light near the back. Inside, a woman was arranging sketches on a table. "Is Ryan here?" Ethan asked. Stepping inside, she shook her head. "He left town a week ago. Said he needed space." Ethan nodded slowly. "Did he leave anything behind?" She glanced toward a small envelope pinned near the door. "Just that. Said someone might come for it." Ethan unfolded it carefully. Inside was a single sketch, two figures again, but this time they faced each other. On the back, Ryan's handwriting: "Sometimes the people we meet only remind us of what we've lost, not what we need to find." The paper trembled slightly in Ethan's hands. For the first time, he understood, Ryan hadn't been a temptation, he'd been a lesson. A mirror to the hollow space Ethan had allowed to grow between himself and Lucas. That he stood there for a long while, watching the rain streak the glass, before finally turning toward home. When he entered the apartment, Lucas was sitting at the kitchen table, a suitcase half-packed beside him. He didn't look up right away. "You went to find him, didn't you?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. But he's gone." Lucas's shoulders dropped, exhaustion etched across his face. "So what now, Ethan?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I don't want to keep pretending." Lucas looked at him for a long moment, the silence thick with years of shared history. "I wanted you to be happy," he said quietly. "I just didn't realize I wasn't enough anymore." Ethan stepped closer, his voice trembling. "It's not about enough. I just forgot how to be honest, with you, with myself." For a heartbeat, neither spoke. The air between them held everything broken yet still breathing. Then Lucas nodded slowly. "Maybe honesty is a start," he said, though his tone was weary. "They didn't touch, didn't promise anything." Ethan knew some fractures couldn't be repaired, only acknowledged. Still, the simple act of truth felt like something alive, a small, painful beginning. That night, after Lucas had gone to bed, Ethan sat alone on the couch with Ryan's sketch on his lap. The two figures on the page seemed almost at peace now, their faces soft, their distance closed. That he placed it on the table beside Lucas's note and whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the rain eased to a drizzle. Through the window, dawn began to break, pale light creeping across the skyline. Ethan watched the city awaken and felt, for the first time in months, something resembling clarity. That he didn't know what would come next, whether Lucas would stay, whether forgiveness would follow, but the path ahead, uncertain as it was, finally felt like his own. When the first bus of the morning passed below, its lights flickering across the wet street, Ethan didn't move to catch it. He simply watched it disappear around the corner, carrying other strangers toward their intersections, their unspoken stories, and in that quiet moment, he understood that sometimes the unraveling of one life is simply the beginning of another.